Thank you for your recognition, Mr. President. And let me just say I have been sitting here listening to my colleague, the senator from Wyoming, and I think he makes some good points. I think we do need a more open process. I think we need to try as much as possible to work with each other in the committee process. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think we need to allow germane amendments and have a good, robust debate on the bills that are on the floor. But the thing that I wanted to talk about today is the fact that we're in a filibuster. And 52 of us wanted to move forward on this bill, and the 45 of us didn't. And that's why we're locked in this situation. And I rise with regret today, and there is much to regret about yesterday's vote on the student loan bill. First, I regret the false choice between helping students or funding preventive health care. Most Americans support student loans. Most Americans see the value of preventive health care. And yet my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would ask that we sacrifice one for the other. An affordable education should not be held hostage to cuts in preventive health care. That is not a choice, it's an ultimatum. Have we really come to this? We teach our children to set goals, to set priorities. It should surprise no one that they seriously question our goals, our priorities. It's like a bus heading toward a cliff, and we could turn it around, and we ought to be able to do so without throwing students under it. The other side says they care about our nation's students too. Perhaps, but there is caring, and then there is devotion. And once again, their devotion is for the wealthiest among us, and not for the 7 million students worried about how they will pay for their education. So back to choices. As any bright college student can tell us, it always comes down to choices. How do we protect the Stafford student loan program? By further cuts to preventive health care, by weakening research to prevent disease, by cutting our response to public health emergencies? No, of course not. We do it by closing a tax loophole, by requiring the wealthy to pay their fair share of payroll taxes. Mr. President, I would submit this is not and should not be a tough choice, but apparently it is. In fact, it's so tough that the other side doesn't want to talk about it any further. The result, yet another filibuster, which brings me to my other regret. Once again, this Senate, once again, this Senate is broken, in limbo, stuck. Once again, the American people look on in dismay. The U.S. Senate was once called the greatest deliberative body in the world. And now it reminds me of that song, The Sound of Silence, and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. That is what we hear more and more. Silence, no debate, no discussion. Yesterday's vote was the 21st filibuster by Republicans of a Democratic bill this Congress. The 21st, and the year is young. This ugly parade of filibusters, and for what? Let's see, to block the president's job bill, to stop the repeal of tax breaks for big oil companies, to not help local governments pay for teachers and first responders, and to prevent a minimum tax on households earning more than $1 million a year. And now, student loans, another filibuster, more sounds of silence. I have previously joined my colleagues and friends, Senator Merkley of Oregon and Senator Harkin of Iowa, to push for fundamental reforms in how the Senate operates. The reason then, and even more abundantly clear now, is that the Senate was broken. This is tragic at a time when our country needs us to act. We do almost nothing. It's no wonder that Congress's approval ratings are at an all-time low. Instead of working to solve the major problems that our country faces, we retreat to the shadows. In order to have real change in the process, The Senate has to change the way we go about business. I've advocated and will continue to advocate that the Senate, at the beginning of each Congress, should adopt its own rules by a simple majority vote. The Constitution clearly gives us this authority, and it's time to exercise it. Yet at the beginning of each Congress, the Senate, unlike the House of Representatives, does not vote to adopt its rules. The Senate simply accepts the rules of the previous Congress, rules that lead to the unfettered abuse of filibusters, rules that have made the Senate a graveyard of good ideas. When we fail to reform our rules, their abuse becomes an entrenched part of the Senate's culture. And that is where we are today. After years of filibuster abuse, we have turned the Senate into a super-majoritarian body. To do anything in today's Senate requires 60 votes. Yesterday's vote on the student loan bill was a prime example. We can't even get onto the bill. 52 senators voted to move forward, but 45 senators chose to filibuster. Once again, minority obstruction prevents majority rule. That's not democratic and is not how our founders intended the Senate to operate. This has to change. A new Congress will begin next January. Right now, we don't know which party will control the House, the Senate, or the White House, but it shouldn't matter. The Senate must reform itself. Regardless of which party has control, not for the good of the Democrats or the Republicans, but for the good of the country. The Senate will have many new members next January, and I think most of them will want to become part of a functioning legislative body, one where they can bring their best ideas and have them debated, a body where all views are heard and considered, but majority rule is once again the norm. That institution cannot exist under the existing rules, and we continue to prove that on a daily basis. The reforms Senator Harkin, Merkley, and I proposed at the beginning of this Congress had strong support, but did not pass. And so here we are, 21 filibusters later. And the line of Americans who wait for a Congress that works, that actually gets things done, that comes together to find solutions, that line just got longer by 7 million students. Several of my constituents have watched as they've seen this filibuster proceed, and they've written me on my Facebook page, and I thought I would share a couple of those comments because they really go to the heart about what's happening on student loans. Here, Tracy Edwards writes me, "Student loans are vital. My daughter graduates this Saturday from UNM, the University of New Mexico. Without student loans, this day would not have come." Her daughter wouldn't have graduated without a student loan. "In 6 months, we will start repayment of those loans. I'm not asking anyone else to pay my daughter's loan, but why should we be punished with an increase for trying to ensure our children get a solid education? If a bankruptcy is filed, you could lose your home, your car, your credit, but student loans are mandated for repayment, no matter what. Is it too much to ask for a fair interest rate? I think the 1% will not be happy until it is a world of haves and have-nots." Thank you, Tracy, for that comment. Donna Kubiak writes, "I agree. My daughter is a single mom of 3 kids and working on her degree to teach elementary school. Without financial aid, she will have to work for a minimum wage job and get welfare indefinitely." Thank you, Donna, for that comment. And Mr. President, as we know, this issue is absolutely crucial to 7 million American students who don't want to see just a couple of months from now those interest rates skyrocket. I believe the estimate is about $1,000 per student. They can't afford that. We need to get this bill on the floor. We need to cut out the filibusters, and we need to settle down and do the amendment process, due to the debate, and produce a bill.